Let's get to E.W. Jackson. Bishop E.W. Jackson, the president of the Stand organization. E.W., good to have you with us, sir.
John, great to be with you as always. Thanks for having me.
Man, I can't wait to get your take, unvarnished, on the Alabama situation.
Well, you know, it's very interesting. My position is evolving, shall we say. When I talked about this, what's the day? Wednesday. When I talked about this on Monday, I trashed the Washington Post because I don't know whether you or your listeners recall, but the Washington Post actually did a tremendous hit job on me. They sent a reporter to my hometown to prove that the house I grew up in as a foster child did in fact have an indoor bathroom when it did not. They sent people to Boston to prove that I was not a chaplain for the Boston Red Sox when in fact I was. And that I didn't go to Harvard Divinity School. I didn't graduate, but I did cross-register while I was in law school. But they sent reporters to prove that I didn't, and I did. So, and then they reported this stuff as if they proved that I was a liar, as if they proved that I was a person of low character because I was embellishing my background and making things up. I mean, so these people have a penchant for lying and attacking conservatives, I think particularly probably Christian conservatives. So I doubted them, and I still doubt any source that comes from them. I am highly suspect of its veracity. But on the other hand, I'll tell you, and I haven't heard others talk about this, so you might find this interesting. The thing that bothers me most is even though I don't know, like you, whether the allegations are true or not, the thing that bothers me most is hearing that the people of Gadsden, where he apparently was living at that time, maybe where he grew up, are saying that, well, you know, everybody knew that was his deal. Everybody knew that he liked young girls. It was, you know, I mean, they didn't want him at the mall because he would come there. When there seems to be at least sort of a widespread knowledge, and people are saying, well, we're just surprised that, you know, this hadn't come out before. That gives me pause because I think when people are doing things with a pattern of behavior, so to speak, eventually a lot of people start to know about it. It's hard to conceal it. So that bothers me. Would I vote for him? The answer right now is still yes, I would. But I'm waiting. I'm looking. I'm seeing is another shoe going to drop? Is there going to be something definitive that comes out that says, you know what? Yeah, he's really done all this stuff, and now you're really on the horns of a dilemma. So right now, I've been moving in my position, but I'm not quite at the point where Ted Cruz is and some others are, where I'm saying, well, I wouldn't support him and I wouldn't vote for him. Because right now, I think he's innocent until proven guilty. You got to give the man the benefit of the doubt, even though there are some doubts.
E.W., don't you agree with me that in the next 3 weeks, I mean, this election is still 3 weeks out, that more evidence on both sides is going to come out that we don't know, right? Because we didn't know about this other woman until 2 days ago. More evidence is going to come out on both sides, right? There could be evidence saying that one of these women maybe were not credible. There's a disputing story. Don't you have confidence in the voters of Alabama that they will act as jury, if you will, in this situation and decide whether or not he is legitimate enough to represent them in the U.S. Senate? And would you take their word? And if you were in the Senate, would you vote to allow him to serve if indeed he wins?
If he wins, if the people of Alabama vote for him, absolutely unequivocally, I would fight an effort to expel him or to refuse to seat him in the U.S. Senate. I think that's arrogance in the extreme. I think that's the same thing liberals do. We know better than everybody else. We don't care what the people said. We're smarter, and we're going to do what we know is right. No, I think we ought to accept the will of the people of Alabama when it's settled. We may like it or we may not like it, but I don't think we have any business trying to overturn it. I mean, isn't that what the left has tried to do to President Trump? I mean, come on. You know, you have to be consistent. Otherwise, you're engaged in gross hypocrisy.
That's kind of what I think. I mean, look, the voters of Alabama, I think, are going to make this decision, and I don't think they're going to take it lightly. And you know, you might not like the outcome of elections, but you have to accept that we live in a representative republic, and you've got to accept the word of the voters in their individual jurisdictions, states, congressional districts, whatever they may be, right? I mean, I didn't like the outcome of the Virginia elections on Tuesday, but that's what the voters want, and so we abide by it. And by the way, have you seen any Republicans running around with signs in Virginia that say, Ralph Northam, not my governor? Have you seen any of those?
Well, as a matter of fact, I haven't seen anybody running around with a sign saying Ralph Northam wouldn't shake the hand of a black man, which, as we know, he would not shake my hand during a deep debate. Ralph Northam is a baby killer. As we know, he is an avid proponent of abortion, although he holds himself out as this compassionate pediatrician who cares for children. But no, I haven't seen those signs going up. I'm not going to go out in the street and do them. I mean, he was elected by the people. I hope that his career ends here and he can't do any more damage to Virginia or to the country. But yeah, I mean, I accept the decision of the voters. This is the way our constitutional republic works.
All right, so look, that's the bottom line here. We're going to wait to see, E.W. Jackson, what else happens and what else comes out of this. Let's get to the election on Tuesday. The results, very disappointing for Republicans, an absolute shellacking. Democrats turning out in record numbers, and we've got at least 15 House seats flipped in the House of Delegates. One race, David Yancey's, he's up by 9, I believe, pending the recount, so that's 50-50. We don't know what's going to happen there, so it could be a tie. Explain that.
Wow. I don't think there's one factor. I know that there are people running around saying, you know, this is and the media just went crazy. You know, they finally got healed from election night. I think they took this as their moment to shed their grief because, as you know, they were mourning on the election night of 2016, and they finally shed that by saying this is a repudiation of the president. Look. You and I know, John, Virginia has been changing for years now. The demographics of the state as a result primarily of Northern Virginia have been changing for years. That's part of what happened. And by the way, that change is not done. And Republicans have got some soul searching to do to figure out the pathway to statewide victory, because I don't think it's an easy one. I think there is one, but it's not an easy one. So that's the biggest factor. I mean, they had 200,000 more voters show up in the primaries, and of course we know that Ed Gillespie lost, what was it, 360,000 votes. I mean, just a devastating loss, and it was primarily Northern Virginia. I think there was some anti-Trump motivation there, and of course we know that the left did everything that they could to try to stoke that. And I think that the smearing of Ed Gillespie as a racist, I think that's part of a whole attitude that they portray about the Republican Party in general, that white people in the Republican Party are racist, black people in the Republican Party just stupid and sellouts and this sort of thing, and just, you know, I mean, we hate. With me, they portrayed me as hating President Obama. So this is where they always go. They smear the character of the person because they don't have the facts and they don't have the policies on their side. But yeah, I think part of it was motivation to try to hurt the president and try to demonstrate that, you know, the president doesn't hold sway here in Virginia. But I think another factor that is not being considered is that you've got to look. 30% of the people, according to Pew, in Virginia are evangelicals. But John, you've got to motivate those folks to get out and vote. You've got to inspire them, because if they come out in numbers, that could have a significant impact on the outcome of these statewide elections. And then the last thing I would say is that I just believe that the Republican Party is going to have to decide that we're no longer going to surrender the black vote. And I'm not blaming Ed Gillespie or saying he didn't try, but I think Republicans are going to have to decide we're going to compete for minority votes, and we're going to compete seriously for minority votes and offer a program and policies for uplifting people because, the violence, the drug addiction, the gangs, the poverty, the lack of jobs and opportunities, the poor educational system that exists in these inner cities. Nobody's really addressing this stuff. All the Democrats are saying, hey, Republicans are racist. We're not. Vote for us. Your circumstances won't change, but you're certainly going to feel better about it. I think that the black community and probably other minorities as well are just tired of that old mantra, but they've got to be given an alternative. And right now, frankly, the Republican Party has not done it. The president is the first one to come along and say, hey, what have you got to lose? We're going to do something about these inner city problems. Most Republicans don't even address it.
EW, let me ask you this straight out, okay? Tough question. You said many of the same things in 2013. You ran for lieutenant governor. You won the nomination at a convention in an amazing fashion. You made a tremendous speech. I didn't think you were going to win, and you did. But you said the same thing during the campaign. Ralph Northam beat you by 10. What's different now?
Well, for one thing, I'm different. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot during that campaign. I understand some things now that I didn't understand. I mean, Ralph Northam outspent me 2-1. I think if I run this time, I'm going to be a much, much better candidate than I was then in terms of understanding what I've got to do to win. That's number one. Number two, I have to tell you, John, nobody expected me to win. I expected me to win, but I wasn't prepared to win. If anybody recalls, just stepping back and looking at it, when I won, I was like a deer caught in the headlights. We had a strategy for winning the nomination, but honestly, we did not have a strategy for winning the general election. And we just kind of bounced from pillar to post and ran all over the Commonwealth, and it just wasn't enough. And obviously, if I run for U.S. Senate, that's not going to happen this time. If I win the nomination, I will win the nomination with a clear strategy for how we're going to win the general election. And by the way, any candidate better have a clear strategy because it ought to be obvious that we've got an uphill climb with the kind of vote that turned out last time. So here again, this thing is not going to be a cakewalk, but I know it can be done. So, I'm a very different candidate. And plus, I'll be ready for the press this time because I had no idea how much they hate us until after I won the nomination. And then I found out, oh, my goodness gracious, I am in a war not just with the other candidate or with my opponent. I'm in a war with the press. Ready in 2013.
Well, EW, I think that is a very sober assessment of what happened in 2013, and I thank you for your candor on that, and I happen to agree with it 100%. I think you're spot on. So if you do run for Senate to get the nomination, you're going to have to run through the Corey Stewart buzzsaw, and that's what it is. It's a buzzsaw. And Stewart is the favorite right now. He's got an organization in place. He's raising money. And he takes no prisoners. How are you going to defeat Corey Stewart in a Republican primary?
Well, I guess it's going to come down to, everything looks good until you place it up against something that looks better. And I guess it's going to come down to when people have a chance to see Corey as a candidate and see me as a candidate, whether they think he will best represent the Commonwealth of Virginia and the principles of the Republican Party, or I will. And obviously, I'll have to make that case. John, I'm not a negative person. It's just not my style to go out and attack other Republicans. I don't think that's even productive. So I won't be doing that. But as always, I will be pointing out the contrast between Corey Stewart and myself if I run, because I think you've got to do that. You got to let voters see why you're different than the other person. And then, of course, as always, the voters will decide. But if I run, I'm confident that we'll do just fine.
When are you going to make a decision?
Soon, very soon.
Define very soon, like a week or a month?
I would say less than a month, a little bit more than a week.
And you're going to announce it on my radio show, right?
I gave you my word.
You're a man of your word, E.W. Jackson. Well, if you get in, Corey Stewart is going to take out both bazookas, and it's going to be ready, fire, aim. So you just got to be prepared for that. We go into this thing, he's the favorite. Somebody's going to have to beat him. And
Sure.
We'll see how it turns out. But he goes in the favorite, no question. EW,
Well, look, he just got finished running, so of course he's ahead of the rest of us. However, I'll remind you, he was the first in the lieutenant governor's race too.
That's correct. He was.
So
he was. You're right, and you did beat him at that convention. You were first. He was number 3. EW,
he was number 3. That's
EW,
right.
Thanks for joining us today. If I don't talk to you, have a good weekend. We'll see you next week. We'll probably get you on Tuesday. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, John.
See you then. Thanks for being with us.
All right. God bless.